You have arrived at your destination.
Hi, this is Gene Simmons from KISS, and you're listening to Sean vs. Wild. And guess what? Now that you've heard this, you owe me $29.95. Go to kissonline.com. Boom.
All right, everybody, it's time to rock and roll all night and podcast every Tuesday. That's right. Another exciting episode of the Sean vs. Wild podcast is coming to you right now, hosted by me. You guys know me, the man, the myth, the Sean Thriller Smith, the guy putting rad back into talk radio. Guys, this Tuesday, it's going to be an excellent episode. I have a guest that will absolutely blow your mind. I'm talking to Kevin Kennedy, a.k.a. Mad Man Pondo. And this guy is one of the most respected names in independent wrestling, specifically the hardcore deathmatch style wrestling. Something tells me you guys already know that. Probably a lot of new listeners here this week to check out Pondo's conversation with me. But for the casual listener that might not be familiar with deathmatch style wrestling, something you might want to check out if you got the stomach for it. Ultra violent, ultra bloody. It's very enjoyable in a very primal way. I know that kind of sounds strange, but there's a huge following for it. Definitely suggest checking it out if you can. YouTube it. Mad Man Pondo is talking to me this week. And guys, when it comes to the crazy stories, he has them all written down and compiled in a brand new book, a brand new autobiography. Him and John Cosper released Memoirs of a Madman. And when we talked here, as the time of the recording of our conversation, it was the #1 selling wrestling autobiography on Amazon. So big up to you, Pondo, for making it happen there. Guys, definitely check out the book. You can get it at eatsleepwrestle.com, eatsleepwrestle.com. You can get it signed there, so go ahead and pick it up. Signed or unsigned, doesn't matter. Got to get the book. It's hilarious. I own it. I've been reading through it. Very quick and easy read. A lot of fun stories, and he's going to be telling some of those stories right here on the podcast this week. So definitely check it out. We're going to be talking about his childhood. We're going to be talking about how he got into wrestling, local wrestling specifically here too. So if you're in the Louisville metro area, you'll hear some good stories about that. And then just a bunch of other excellent things. So check that out. And so that's what's going on this week. So hopefully you guys are ready to hear something excellent. Also about hearing something excellent, I got to tell you, I've sponsored the Foxbat CD release show. That's right. August 4th, they are releasing, or having a big release show for their brand new album, Rot Gut, and you're definitely going to want to check it out. Now, I'm not trying to sound cool or anything, but I have heard the album ahead of time. I got a little sneak peek. I've seen some of the music videos. I've seen some of the stuff they've got in the pipeline. Dude, Foxbat is a band you definitely don't want to sleep on. And that show is one that you definitely don't want to sleep on. If you're not there, if you don't show up, guys, you don't exist. In the words of, I think that was from Son-in-Law. Not sure. Anyway, guys, Foxbat, Guerrilla Warfare versus Light Treasons and Summer Youth. A lot of those bands, Sean vs. Wild alumni. So got to go out there, support my boys. So, but yeah, and you should definitely check it out as well. It's going to be Saturday, August 4th. Doors are at 7. Show starts at 8. $8 in advance, $10 the day of the show. So if you're one of those lazy people like myself, you want to wait till the last minute, $10 at the door, and you can party all night long with the greatest bands in Louisville right now. So check it out for sure. Guys, it's going to be at Headliners Music Hall. So you can party like you were 17 again. Go to Headliners Music Hall, 18 plus. So got to be 18 if you want to come in and party. But yeah, speaking of partying as well, just found out, got an email that thanks to the efforts of the podcast, well, at least it helped some, I'm sure. Revival Recordings, they got their 1,000 followers for their playlist. And I'm so stoked on that. And they already gave away the Amazon Echo. And guess what, dude? You'll never guess who won. It wasn't me. I didn't win. It would be cool if I won, but I didn't win. But really, if you think about it, you win every week because for 52 straight weeks, you're getting some of the most awesome new music. Okay, so you're going to check out new bands. Some of the bands, that have been right here on the Sean vs. Wild podcast, like June Divided or Alisana or The Funeral Portrait, or a lot of other great revival recording artists that I'm sure will be on the podcast later. Check it all out. Or, guys, if you're musicians, touring musicians out there, find awesome bands that are out there doing shit and tour with them. Look up the playlist, hit these bands up, hit the road together, make it happen. That's how it's done, guys. All you have to do is go to ffm.to/revival52. That's ffm.to/revival52. Sign up for that playlist. Hit that follow button. F as in Frank, F as in Frank, M as in Mary.to/revival52. That's right, guys. I've worked in call centers before. I'm using the F as in Frank and the M as in Mary. And I didn't even use like the military ones or anything, so I'm not that cool. Foxtrot, Foxbat, and Metallica.to/revival52. But yeah, guys, awesome show today. Definitely check it out. Big shout out to my old school sponsor at Audiophile Inc., audiophileInc.com. Ask for Shane. Tell him the Wild Man sent you. He's going to get all of your merchandise printed up, looking good, giving you the best deal in town, no matter what town you live in, shipping to all 50 nifty United States. Also, too, got to give a big shout out to Audible, audibletrial.com/Sean vs. Wild. Sign up for a free 30-day. Get an audiobook that's yours to keep forever. As long as you have Audible, you can keep that book. Whether you decide to have Audible for 30 days or never, you can cancel it right afterwards. But you still get the book for free and you're keeping it. All right? That's yours. Signed, sealed, delivered. audibletrial.com/Sean vs. Wild. Sign up for the free 30 days. There's over 180,000 audiobooks for you to choose from. And yeah. And when you do, they're going to cut me a check, a huge check, just like in Publishers Clearinghouse. You know, a gigantic check. Ed McMahon's going to present it to me. And it's going to, I'll be able to keep the lights on here in the Smithsonian. But yeah, guys, that's going to be enough for me. Thank you so much to Mad Man Pondo for doing this. Check out the book, Memoirs of a Mad Man, Mad Man Pondo with John Cosper. Really funny. EatSleepWrestle.com. Pick up your copy right now. And until then, guys, let's get wild. All right, Pondo, the first thing I have to talk to you about, okay, one of the early parts of your brand new book, story that you were talking about how, when you went to your great-grandparents' house, your great-grandmother, and you would sit down and watch wrestling. Now, I grew up also, spent a lot of time with my grandparents, loved wrestling growing up, and what's so great about when I read the book, it was like the same reason why you got into it is the same reason why I got into it, and it's because we could hear our grandmothers cuss.
Not only could I hear her, I'm sitting, me and my brother, every Sunday we would go to dinner or lunch or whatever at my great-grandparents' house, and we'd be sitting on the floor, and of course everybody's, just normal people, but the minute that Channel 7 wrestling come on, there was dirty motherfuckers and cocksuckers and all types of stuff, and me and my brother were just blown away, and like, my mom or my grandma, not my great-grandma, would be like, the kids are right there, and she's like, well, they just made me mad. And then the very next thing, motherfuckers, cocksuckers, it was just great. And it just made me an instant fan. And I wasn't that far from Evansville. So at a very young age, I was going to the Coliseum and watching matches. And then I realized it wasn't only my great-grandma and grandpa. There was other older people, that was just going nuts on people. And that made me an instant fan.
Was there one wrestler in particular that your great-grandmother just couldn't stand?
Yeah, this was back when Jerry the King Lawler was a heel.
Right.
She hated Jerry the King Lawler, and then Jimmy Hart, and then it turned into Jimmy Hart. I remember I don't remember, but I do remember that Jerry the King Lawler she hated very bad, but man, it didn't matter to us who she loved; it was who she hated.
Right.
Because she wasn't a very big woman. And, I don't know if you can picture like this very tall, gray-haired man, and both of them was just so reserved and didn't even talk that much until that wrestling come on, and then it was just, Sailor City for both of them and going nuts.
Yeah, man, just bring the demons out in somebody. And that's the thing. Growing up here, where I grew up here in the Louisville metro area, so we had, same USWA wrestling or Memphis wrestling basically in Louisville on Tuesday. And,
Right.
My great grandpa was, in his growing up, he was in his 60s, 70s, still going to wrestling, and he would literally yell and scream at these wrestlers to the point where he couldn't even like talk the next day. And I'm like, I was just thinking, man, that's a lot of passion and commitment to really hate someone. But that's the beauty about wrestling, man. It makes older people go insane and turn into people that you just never recognize.
Both the homes that we used to go watch that at, the Louisville Gardens and the Evansville Coliseum. I would go to the Evansville Coliseum on Wednesday and see the same show that you saw at Louisville Gardens on Tuesday. But Louisville Gardens is just so sad that it's like a storage for all the dumpsters in town now.
Yeah.
Did you know about that? Yeah, like stinks like God took a shit on the earth in there now. And then the Evansville Coliseum, the people that was running it, there's still a company, WWA, that runs out of there, but it's just not the same. It's not, I don't know. But anyway, the two homes that me and you used to love to go watch our USWA wrestling are so far from it anymore. It's just sad to me.
Yeah, I know. And I wish, especially that, in Louisville here, I mean, since we're both now based out of Louisville metro area here, besides like the Danny Davis Arena, there's really not a lot going down in Louisville anymore. And it would be nice to have a venue like Louisville Gardens back up, not even just for wrestling, but, go see music and stuff like that, all the bands that would come through and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, Too Tough Tony, he's got his own arena, and he's doing his best to be the Louisville Gardens. And to me, like you said, Danny Davis and Tony are probably the only two that treat it like that. And, to me, OVW, they are like what am I trying to say here? The technical and headlocks and all that. And then you come over to Tony's Arena and it's all the high flying and the swinging chairs. So, it's the same back in the day. Like there was a WWE, a WWF, and a WCW. WWF, you can see all the wrestling. WCW, you never know what you was going to see, flying chairs and stuff like that. So, yeah, more or less those two in this territory are reliving the old-time wrestling, if you ask me.
The old-time wrestling wars. But yeah, well, big shout-out to Too Tough Tony there, right there at the arena. That's in Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Yeah.
So, Hoosier residents, man, get over there, catch a show. There were some awesome shows. A friend of mine just went and saw a show there last weekend. So, guys, definitely check that out, listeners. But this isn't just, listeners, the two guys talking about senior citizens cussing out wrestlers podcast. This is actually the Sean vs. Wild podcast. And joining me today, one of the most famous names in independent wrestling. His deathmatch style has taken him all over the world. He's lost the blood. He's got the scars to show for it. And it's all written down in a brand new book called Memoirs of a Mad Man. I'm talking to Kevin Kennedy, a.k.a. Mad Man Pondo. Pondo, thanks for joining me here today on the Sean vs. Wild podcast.
Nah, man. Thanks for giving me the time. Right off the bat, though, I want to go ahead and let everybody know the book that we're talking about, you can pick up from Amazon.com. It's right now the #1 wrestling autobiography on Amazon. I never thought I'd be on Amazon, more or less a #1 on Amazon. And then you can also pick it up from John Cosper himself on eatsleepwrestle.com. Talk to him. I believe he'll sell you just a regular copy or an autographed copy. Either way, that's the two places that you can pick up Memoirs of a Madman. And just can't say enough that, yes, I'm a professional wrestler, but this is not just a wrestling book. There is so much in this. The forwards from Vanilla Ice, from me and Marilyn Manson sticking Vicks Vapor Rubs in our tear ducts, to me pulling a tooth, to Johnny Fairplay from Survivor's Wedding, to the movie 2001 Maniacs. And then there's stories from Terry Funk, stories from Honky Tonk Man, stories from Kevin Sullivan. I mean, there's embarrassing stories of me jacking off to some girl on the internet, me having sex at a demolition derby, commentator's booth. I mean, I did not hold back. I just put the truth in the book, and if the truth was embarrassing, fuck it. I mean, there you go. I'm pretty laid back and don't really care what people have to say about me, so I just shoved it all in 339 pages, and there you go.
Absolutely. And guys, you have to pick it up. I ordered it last week. It arrived to me Monday night. So arrived to me. It's got Prime shipping, guys. So definitely check it out. It's Prime Day. Treat yourself. But yeah, loved it, man. And I'm about halfway through it now. And the stories are wildly entertaining. The way that it's even written, it's just written like you're reading someone's, I don't know, sometimes embarrassing diary, and then there's also so many awesome other stories and fun things, and it's just very honest, and it's really well done. So big congratulations to you on the book, man. I'm loving it so far.
Hey, man, big congratulations to John Cosper for having the faith in me to even write a book about me. And here we're on our, I believe, we've ordered our third boxes of a batch of books, so I hear it's doing good. Well, I mean, it has to be doing good on Amazon to be number one. It's doing good from us, and I'm just a guy who likes to have fun, and people noticed along the way, so I had no idea that many people would want to know what I had to say, but I'm so glad that they do.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, let's go ahead and jump in here. What made you decide to go ahead and put it down on paper and go ahead and release a book?
Well, John Cosper wrote a book called Eat, Sleep, Wrestle, and there is little pieces of all the wrestlers in this area. He would ask, questions, and the book's just full of all independent and unindependent, the wrestling stars all in this book. And ironically, there's so many wrestlers in this book that everybody would go to my 2 paragraphs and they start telling John Cosper, like, you need to write a book about Mad Man Pondo. And he'd heard it so many times that finally he approached me with it. And I was apprehensive because I didn't want to have a big book written about me, and then 2 weeks later it's on the shelf at the Dollar Tree, some shit like that. So anyway, so many people would ask him about it, and he just kept on. Well, then people started asking me and telling me, hey, you need to write a book. So I went to John Cosper and I said, you know what? You're right. Let's do it. Let's write the Mad Man Pondo book. But by the time I had decided let's do it, he was writing also Dr. D. David Schultz's book, which is also available in the same 2 spots, Amazon.com or EatSleepWrestle.com. So Dr. D lives somewhere near Nashville, and he would have to drive back and forth. Plus, there was so much stuff that he had to go through, so many bounty hunting folders and other wrestling information that it took longer to get my book done because he was working on 2 at the same time, focusing in a lot on Dr. D, David Schultz's, but every free time that he would get, he would say, hey, can we talk? Can we do, and we'd go out to eat, or we'd go to his house. We'd go to wrestling shows and tell stories. Well, then it got to the point where a bunch of my friends was like, well, I put a post out that said, anybody has a Mad Man Pondo story, send it to John Coffey. Well, it was just unreal how many people was like, well, I have a Pondo story. So, things started getting easier, but we still had Dr. D. Schultz's. Well, the minute Dr. D's book got printed and put out, all the focus was on me, and 339 pages of pictures, and me in a comic book, and me messing with a scammer, and just plenty of stories. We got 339 pages out of it, and there it is, Memoirs of a Madman.
It's awesome. Yeah, and let's go ahead and just kind of, I don't want to give away the good stuff here from the book because, guys, it's important that you go ahead and pick it up. Again, it's on eatsleepwrestle.com, and it's on Amazon, and those links will be, of course, in our description, in our podcast notes here. But, just one thing that I want to talk about here, how your interest in wrestling blossomed, because something that I thought was pretty endearing, but also something that you would probably never, ever see again in this generation is you had a teacher that, in order, if you kept your grades up, would take you to wrestling.
Well, no. The teacher was the guy paying for Junkyard Dog and Coco Beware. No, Roy West Jr. was just a guy in my town. He wasn't a teacher. He worked out at the sewage plant. But I worked at a video store, and my mom also worked at a video store. He approached my mom with it first. And as long as we would keep our grades up, he would take us, to these wrestling events. And I'll go ahead and I'll mark off what I'm talking about. I lived in Florida, Illinois. And an hour and a half to the west was Wrestling at the Chase in St. Louis. It started at the Checker Dome, but then it went to the Keel Auditorium. I went to both. And they had guys like Spike Huber, Bulldog Bob Brown, Bruiser Brody was there a lot. And, really good stuff. And then an hour to the south was ICW. Like, did I say an hour? I'm sorry. Wrestling at the Chase was an hour and a half to the west, not the north. An hour and a half to the west. An hour south was ICW, which was Macho Man Randy Savage, Lethal Manny Poffo, Crusher Broomfield, who later became One Man Gang. And there was a team that used to scare the living shit out of me called the Devil's Duo, which was Doug Barnes and John Sword with their manager Izzy Slapowitz, and they had a Bible, and I was a kid. That shit would scare the shit out of me. But
was it like a satanic gimmick or something?
Yeah, it was totally Devil's Duo. Yeah. And then, later at USWA, they become the Barroom Brawlers. Do you remember those guys? That's who they were. Well, anyway, so an hour and a half to the east was Evansville, Indiana, and that's where USWA was. It was CWA before that, but then it became USWA. And every once in a while, WWE would do a kind of a crap show. The main event would be cool. The main event was one of them was Adrian Adonis versus Roddy Piper, which was way cool. But the rest of the card was full with like Leaping Lanny and Moondog Spot, and
right. Just kind of like your C-rate house show.
Yes, that's what it was. And then 5 hours to the north had Chicago. And they had every damn thing you could think of. They had WWF, they had WCW, AWA, they had World Class, just everything. And as long as I kept those grades up, I was allowed to go on these wrestling trips. So, and to say that I was a fan learning off these guys might sound weird, but a lot of the things that I do now, I saw back then. as a fan, I would see it, and then later on, I would be like, that was cool that this guy did that, and then I'll do it in the ring. So I would say that Roy West Jr. helped my career along just by taking me to all those wrestling shows.
Right. It gave you the education, the fundamentals, the things like that you're still using.
Right. Like USWA, they had the sheep herders.
Right.
And that weird face that I make, clenching my teeth, I don't do that in real life. That's like mimicking the sheep herders back in the day.
Yeah, and for all you guys out there that might not, if you don't recognize the name sheep herders, you definitely will recognize the Bushwhackers, and the sheep herders went on to become the Bushwhackers.
I'm not a. If this makes sense, I'm not a fan of the Bushwhackers, but I'm a big fan of the sheep herders.
Yeah, because they used to be bloody, brutal, and then they got to WWE and they're just licking kids' faces.
Right. And one of them that was left out, I'm not even sure if he's still alive, was Jonathan Boyd, and it was always Jonathan Boyd with Butch, or Jonathan Boyd with Luke, or Jonathan Boyd with Bigfoot, or Jonathan, Morgan something. I can't remember what his name was, but yeah, the sheep herders, they would just make everybody bloody, and they was one of my favorite teams down there at the Memphis Wrestling. And
you talk to in the book, that you were drawn to that sort of style, that more brutal style, and you became a tape trader, and watched a lot of the death matches and things like that from Japan and around the world as well. Were you doing that before you decided to get into wrestling?
Oh yeah, hell yeah! I was doing that. Man, I'm so terrible with dates, but my buddy Casey Stefan's the one who got me, later in life, going more hardcore at it than what I was. But do you remember Wrestling Review magazine?
I don't think so. I think that was a little bit before my time. I'm 32, so
okay. Well, they would give you a little list of pen pals, other wrestling fan pen pal things. So some of them would be Japanese, or some of them would be German. Well, you get to talking to them guys, and that was before video and this was like 80, 85 maybe, and yeah, there was VCRs, but they were like $1,000 back then. Like nobody owned one, but it was just cool to take a USWA program, put it in an envelope, and send it to Germany or Japan, and then them send you back flyers from their country, which I still wish I had them, but I've been divorced and moved so many times, all that shit's gone somewhere. But and then when tape trading, when VHS started coming out real hot and heavy, that's when tape trading got so popular. And then the dirt sheets. Do you know anything about the dirt sheets?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, the dirt sheets would give you addresses of guys wanting to do tape trading. So all of a sudden, I started getting addicted. And in Florida, Illinois, my parents probably had one of the first modded satellites. So I was recording everything, man. I was recording 6 hours of Lucha Libre. I was recording John Paul's South Mid-Atlantic with Ivan Koloff, and Ken Shamrock was a Savaldi. And then, just any wrestling I could find, I was recording it. And, there was always a market for what I had to somebody else's what they had. Well, the cool thing was guys was getting a hold of Puerto Rican and Japanese deathmatch videotapes, and I would get those, and it would just thrill the shit out of me more than any other wrestling out there. So I started putting feelers out there to everybody who was doing death matches, and then getting videotapes back and forth, and just loving life. And then I filled up a whole wall, not just halfway, but I filled a whole wall of videotapes. And my mom said, "That's enough of this shit. Get this shit out of here, put it all on one or do what you got to do." But, she couldn't understand that what I was recording here was going somewhere else, and then I was getting something else back. And, she just knew that these things are going to fall someday, and I'm going to have to pick them up, and that's bullshit. You know
Right.
how it is.
Yes, exactly. Well, so you're getting into that style. We'll just fast forward here a little bit in the timeline that, you've done your training. You've got the Mad Man Pondo character. And so where do you go? What's life like from there? Say you right after, wrestling school.
Wrestling school, I started with Bud Chapman, and his trainer was the sensational hillbilly Terry Runyon. Both of them passed away now. But and my buddy Scott Little or Scott Champion, whatever you want to call him, the California Kid, came in, and me and him would travel around. But it got to the point where I knew that if I stayed in that school, and this isn't putting anybody down, but if I stayed in that school, I was going to be a 40-miler, and I didn't want to be a 40-miler. I got into professional wrestling where the world would know who I was. Well, you would think that I would try for WWE, WWF, but I never cared about WWF. My dream was always Japan. I wanted to wrestle in Japan. Back in the day, I would watch Godzilla movies, and the two little fairies that would call Mothra to fight Godzilla. Mm-hmm. I was in love with them two little shits. So I thought, well, hell, if there's a whole country of them, I want to go there, So it was always my plan to go to Japan. But when I figured out that there was death matches going on, which my favorite company was Wings. All right, there was Wings, there was FMW, and there was IWA. IWA, I don't think they had another name. I just think it was IWA. IWA is the guys who did the first King of the Death matches with Mick Foley and Terry Funk.
Right.
FMW had Onita with all the exploding barbed wire and all the viciousness that it had. But Wing was like creative shit, They was doing the piranha death match and the scaffold down into barbed wire and just, I was always a big Wing fan. And two guys that came out of that was Masanaga and Mr. Pogo. Rest in peace, Mr. Pogo. But tapes started circulating of Mr. Pogo pouring gas or pouring something on Masanaga and then spitting a fireball and catching his hair on fire. Or, they was the first two that I ever saw use a barbed wire bat on each other. I was just so engulfed on what those two were doing that I told myself, I can do this. So I left Bud Chapman's group and I started going to Hohenwald, Tennessee, and wrestle with Chris Champion. I would go to Evansville, Indiana, and wrestle at Bill Dundee's company and a furniture factory, just trying to get my name out there as best I could. And, I think I did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
It's not like I've ever been on mainstream TV, but a lot of people know who I am in the wrestling world.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say too, like, especially like when it comes to so many tapes and stuff like that, like, you're working like CZW and IWA. I mean, you're now part of that tape trader community. I mean, your matches are the ones that, people were trading on the internet whenever I was into that in the late 90s, early 2000s and that sort of thing. So it's kind of neat that it went full circle. Like all the people that you loved and the stuff you wanted to see, you became that person for other people as well.
True that. I never even thought about it like that.
But yeah, well, and I'll tell you what too, just how Mad Man Pondo got on my radar. Actually, so I was born and raised. I guess I wouldn't say I was born. I was born in Jeff here at the hospital, but raised in Charlestown, Indiana. And whenever I was a kid, I was into pro wrestling, always into WWE and stuff like that, WWF at the time. And then, one day a friend of mine was like, "Hey, you know they have wrestling in Charlestown, right?" And I was like, "No, man, I didn't. I didn't." And they're like, "Yeah, but it's not like anything you've ever seen before." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay, cool." Like, and they're like, "No, sincerely, like it's like really hardcore." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, like ECW." They're like, "No, not like ECW. We have to go." And so my grandparents driving me to the old IWA arena back when it was in Charlestown there off of Highway 62.
Garage?
In the garage, yes. I'm churching it up, calling it the IWA arena, but yes, in the garage there. And my God, dude, first night, I saw you wrestled Corporal Robinson, and it was super hardcore. I'm like 13, 14 years old, and it was unlike anything that I had ever seen before. And it's so weird because I'm like, just being from this small town, it's like not only did I get to see Mad Man Pondo and get to see all this stuff, but I got to see like CM Punk and I got to see like Chris Hero before they were, doing anything, you know what I'm saying? And like, look at all that sort of thing. So I'm very lucky to do that, but that's the first time I actually ever heard of Mad Man Pondo is because it was like one of those things. It was like a secret in high school. They're like, "Dude, there is this wrestling and you definitely have to check it out." So.
Well, it's because of that style over in that Kmart building. We was doing 350 to 400 people every Tuesday night because for the longest time they had seen USWA. And don't get me wrong, USWA was great and they would bleed and all that, but they wasn't going to the lengths that we were. So in a Kmart bingo hall, an old Kmart building, every Tuesday doing 350 to 400 people, we were doing something so different that people wanted to see it. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was a newscaster, and he was good friends with Danny Davis, but we didn't know that, who wanted to do a story on us. And he came in, and when we watched the story on TV, it was more like, beware of this company more than putting it over. It was like, beware of this company. They call them, it's called Bloodsport and all this stuff. Well, where they were trying to hurt us, they did nothing but help us.
Yeah, they gave you the best publicity ever.
Exactly. We went from 350 to 400 to 450, just crazy numbers and everybody yelling and going nuts, and it helped us out a lot. But my point of that is, it was to the point. People, we were the sideshow freaks. We wasn't the WWE circus or the OVW circus. We were the off-brand sideshow freaks, and people wanted to see our oddity. So they would jam-pack that old Kmart building every Tuesday.
Yeah, and, I was one of those kids. I didn't go to the Kmart building, but went to it in Charlestown. Went to it when it moved down by 2nd Street Bridge and Jeffersonville and things like that, too. And, IWA was a big part of my my angsty teenage years, you know what I'm saying? So
I hear you.
My friends and I would listen to ICP and Disturbed, and then check out wrestling, and then as you do, you get older, and then I discovered punk rock, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll just channel my teen angst over here in this direction. So stopped watching wrestling for a bit and became a musician, became a punk rock musician. But still, those things are important, you know what I'm saying, like to people when they grow up, those memories and stuff like that. And it's just awesome to be able to sit down now almost 20 years later, you know what I'm saying? 17, 18 years later, and chat with somebody that was responsible for, having a great time on a Friday night or Saturday night through wrestling.
Well, that's me. I mean, who would have known that what we was doing back then? And please tell me that you even realized that, yes, ECW was doing their thing, but IWA Mid South was doing the same Puerto Rican and Japanese stuff that I had seen on the videotapes. That's what we were focusing. That's what we were doing. And, in America, and I don't care if it's bragging, it's just the truth. IWA Mid South started the whole hardcore deathmatch scene in America. And then shortly after CZW came up, then MAW in Milwaukee started doing it. And then, and next thing you knew, it branched out everywhere. But IWA Mid South was the first one to start it here in America. Well, no, I'm sorry. ECW did have Ian and Axel doing it, which sparked the deathmatch scene here, but it was Ian who ran IWA Mid South. So IWA Mid South was a whole company of it.
Right. Yeah. And it's the first that I had ever heard or seen of it. And again, I was a huge wrestling fan. It's the first I had ever heard or seen of it. Yeah, and yeah, but then you're right. Combat. I did see CZW pop up, but it was really popular around that time too. Like IWA. Well, for one, I wanted to tell you, I've been going back watching the WWE Network, and randomly they did like an In Your House or something in Louisville, man, and you can just see like this whole front row of people with IWA Mid South signs. Just like,
would that be the one? What was the main event of that? Was it
I can't remember if it was the Shawn Michaels In Your House with the zip line thing that was in Louisville, but I think it was maybe the one before that. But they did two like In Your Houses in Louisville, but a lot of IWA signs.
One of those, if you look back behind Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler, you will see one Mad Man Pondo sitting about 3 or 4 rows back from Vince McMahon.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm going to look back into the archives there and take a peek at that. Yeah, so I'll check that out for sure.
Did Undertaker come up underneath the ring for one of those?
To be honest with you, I can't remember. I've been going back and I've been watching all of the WWE pay-per-views in order, and I'm like in like 2002, and this was like somewhere in the mid-90s, so I've watched a lot of pay-per-views in that.
Let me tell you the problem with me is from childhood until today, I've been to the first night of the Skywalkers. I've been to Halloween Havocs. I've been to many pay-per-views. I went to Super Clash 3. I've been to so much wrestling that I can't remember matches that were on the shows.
Right.
Are you running into that too? Like Super Class 3, I can't. Kerry Von Erich took on Jerry the King Lawler. I remember Sergeant Slaughter took on Colonel De Beers because I'm a big Sergeant Slaughter fan. I can't remember shit else that was on the show. Night of the Skywalkers, I know the main event.
Jim Cornette fell off the scaffolding.
But other than that, why can I not remember these incredible things that I've seen? I think I've just seen so much and got my brains beat out over the years that I just can't remember a damn thing.
Hey, man, I'm like that too. Like in music, like I said, coming from the world of being a touring musician and stuff like that, like so many bands that I've seen, bands that I've played with, and all this stuff throughout the years, shows that I've played, and people will ask me about them, and I'm like, I don't really remember. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's just another day. After a while, like, yeah, I don't really remember everything, but it seems like I had a great time, and I'll take it. So, but yeah, and let me ask you just some quick questions here, because there's some things that I just genuinely want to know, and I told you there might be some dumbass questions that I ask you here, but let me ask you this: where did the stop sign come from? Where did
Okay, the stops. I was using a trash can lid to begin with, and I was in Central City, Kentucky, and I'll never forget it. Like Shelby Adcock's wife, Billie Jean, came and got me and said, "There's a mom and two kids out here who really want to see you." Well, I was a bad guy, but I was like, "All right." So I walked out there, and these two couldn't have been 11 and 12, maybe even 9 and 10 aged kids had a trash can lid, and they were trading shots with each other, thinking that I was impressed by this, but actually in the back of my mind, I'm getting depressed because I'm knocking out grown men with these trash can lids, and these two little kids are right in front of me beating the shit out of each other with one. So I came to the realization that I have to come up with something more vicious than this trash can lid. And at IWA Mid South, there was a stop sign back there. And I told myself, you know what? That's illegal to have. So that's more difficult than going in an alley and picking up a trash can lid. I'll start using that stop sign. Well, then it started picking up so much. I started writing on the stop sign, "Can't Stop Pondo." And as I was going to the ring, people would start chanting, "Can't Stop Pondo." So then I was like, well, hell, this works. So that's where the stop sign started coming in at.
Okay, another question here. The character of Pondo, as far as like, how did you decide like what you were going to wear? Because like to me, Pondo, the character, you know, you see like the cut off horror movie shirt, you see like, you know, the shorts. A lot of times I would see it and they'd be like plaid, and you'd have like these big like what looked like, I don't know, like rollerblader knee pads and the skull and crossbones boots, and like even the early stuff, you had like kind of like a punk rock haircut. And I always thought the character of Pondo might be somewhere between like a hockey goon and like a 1980s bully. But what did you ever imagine, like when you were just like, you know, putting on the gear? Like, what did you imagine the character or the persona to be?
Well, I had gear at one time, and it was good gear. Like, you know, it was well made, and those three shows that I was saying that I did before the Kmart building, before that might have been another podcast. Let me back up. There was three shows that happened before the Kmart building for IWA Mid South, and I believe on the first or the second one, I wore my singlet and my tights, and you know, my boots were all good and all that. Well, very first time that I wrestled at IWA Mid South, I got two big cuts, one on the leg and one on the back, and they were my singlet and my tights were unrepairable. Like, that's how bad the rips was. And my pretty brand new boots had blood all in the white boot strings and all that. So I got to thinking, man, if I'm going to be doing this IWA Mid South shit, I can't be wearing my normal gear. So the weightlifting pants, they wasn't even Zubaz, they were just weightlifting pants, were so easy to get a hold of. So I started wearing those with just a singlet. Well, then my singlet started getting ripped. So I was like, well, shit. Well, I was a big horror movie fan. So I started wearing the weightlifting pants with the horror movie t-shirt with the skull and crossbone wrestling boots. And after a while, it just started becoming my style. So I just rocked it. And basically, it was just me being cheap, not wanting to buy more singlets and wrestling tights.
It was born out of necessity for the work that
there
you were
you
doing.
go. Yep.
Dress for
out
the
of poverty.
job.
Out of poverty, I believe the word would be.
Yeah, I gotcha there. And that's those skull and crossbones boots. Let me ask you too, because that was always like the thing that I remembered most about going to see, you know, the show. It's like, Mad Man Pondo's got these skull and crossbones boots, and for some reason, like as a kid, like Bret Hart had the star on the side, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart had the anvil, and Fucking Scotty Flamingo had a flamingo, which was actually kind of badass. But, it's like one of those things. I was like, Pondo's got the skull and crossbones. Where did you get those? And also, too, I have a follow-up story to the boots. So that's why I bring it up.
All right. I was always a Dr. Death Steve Williams fan, and he had skull and crossbones on the side of his boots. So I never thought that I would ever be in the vicinity of Dr. Death Steve Williams. So I thought, well, I want to do something nobody in this area is doing. Well, hell, the company that I started at, nobody even really had wrestling boots. So I got those skull and crossbones on the side of my boots, and people started identifying me with those. So knock up to the future, I went to a All Japan show, and I was walking around the back, and I'll be damned if Steve Williams didn't start coming down the hallway. And I still wanted to have a conversation with him, or I wanted to ask him to take a picture or whatever, but he kind of saw me and he walked over, and Japanese wrestling magazines come out every week there. So he probably saw that I had skull and crossbones on my boots, and I'm so excited, and I can't wait to shake his hand. And he kind of come up to me and he goes, "Hey, you're that Pondo guy, right?" And I was so amazed. I was like, "Holy shit, Steve Williams knows me." I go, yeah, that's me. And he goes, "Nice boots," and walked on by. I was like, son of a bitch, are you kidding me?
Man.
That's a story that's not in the book right there.
Dude, that's an exclusive, listeners, for Sean vs. Wild listeners only, guys. The time Dr. Death Steve Williams called you out in Japan. But the second part of that story, again, when going through this research, going back and watching all these pay-per-views, there is a wrestler in WWF in the mid-90s that also wore boots that looked exactly like it, and I could not fucking believe who it was. But when Mabel was in Men on a Mission, he wore black boots with white skull and crossbones. And when I saw them, I'm like, I'm pretty sure those are Pondo's boots.
I have no idea.
But yes,
I couldn't tell you.
When Mabel was in Men on a Mission, if you remember that, before he was King Mabel, or maybe during the run of King Mabel, he wore black boots with a white skull and crossbones on it. And I was like, I'll be damned.
Yeah, I don't think those were mine.
Right. Well, not yours, but somebody might have been ripping your style there, bro, is what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he couldn't get the weightlifting pants, but he got the hammer pants. So,
well, there's always a rule in independent professional wrestling. If it's on WWE, they did it first.
That's true.
I guess Mo did it. Steve Williams did it, and then Mo. And then I'm just kind of brushed off underneath the carpet somewhere.
I'm just underneath Mabel's hammer pants somewhere.
That's it, yeah.
That's okay. But yeah, okay. And also, too, a lot of things I want to talk to you about because, we've covered a lot of wrestling, and but you're also a huge horror movie fan. I know I mentioned having
I'm a bigger horror movie fan than I ever was a wrestling fan.
Really?
Yeah.
What are some of the horror movies?
People come to my house and they expect all this wrestling memorabilia, and they see all this horror movie shit, and they're just look so disappointed.
Right? They're like, "Oh man, you're not just like a big, wrestling freak like me. You're just really into all this, John Carpenter stuff."
That's it.
Man, I got a double record of some of John Carpenter's Lost Themes Volume 2.
Oh yeah,
it's absolutely amazing. I don't know if you're a fan of his musical work, but oh my god, the guy's a genius. Obviously, the theme from Halloween, all that sort of thing. But
Escape from New York's theme, the They Live theme. Yeah, I love all that John Carpenter music.
Definitely. Check it out. What are some horror movies that definitely make your list of top favorites?
Well, it's really weird, but there's a movie Trauma release. It's called Mother's Day. That's probably my favorite one. My second one that I've been telling everybody to check out, it's called Girl House, and it's a horror movie for the year 2000s, and you'll see what I'm talking about as you're watching it, but it's got a killer in there called Lover Boy. And then I'm a big fan of Death Race 2000. Not the Jason Statham one, the David Carradine one.
Mm-hmm.
Man, just so many horror movies to even mention. But not just horror movies. Like I love Mad Max. I'm just a movie fan. Like people run down a lot remakes. I don't mind remakes because I just like going to the movies.
Right? Yeah. Did you get MoviePass? That shit'll change your life, bro.
I do. Yep, sure do.
Pondo, if you ever need somebody to go see a movie with you, you just let me know, brother. I've been tearing that thing apart. And then to the point where they're like, hey, you can't go see the really on-demand movies now. You just got to wait a little bit. And I'm like, all right, fine. I'll wait. I'll see everything else while I wait.
Right.
So, yeah.
I also have a little trick. How they say you can't go see the same movie twice?
Yes.
Well, just use your MoviePass to go watch The Notebook. And then go watch what you want. Them kids don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, that's true. Just get your hot buttered popcorn, go to the bathroom, and then go into whatever movie that you want to see.
That's it. They're just making minimum wage. They ain't going to mess with you.
That's words of wisdom from Mad Man Pondo, guys.
That's right.
If you get anything from this podcast, that is what you need to take home, ladies and gentlemen. That and buying Mad Man Pondo's book. Plenty of good advice in that. But yeah, I'll tell you what, a movie that is horror related, and I was like, man, if you're a big horror movie fan, I'm sure you've probably seen it. If not, you got to see it. One that always makes my list of super underrated films. It's not new. It's new-ish, I guess. But were you ever a fan of the movie Frailty with Bill Paxton?
Yeah, I like Frailty.
Yeah, man. That movie and The Gift, but with,
Jason Statham.
No, this one is The Gift, and it's with.
I'm sorry.
It's got Kate Blanchett
from Ozark.
It's got Kate Blanchett.
Jason Bateman.
See, they remake. There's a new movie called The Gift, but they have a movie. It came out in like the 2000s. It's got Kate Blanchett. It's got Keanu Reeves. It's got Gary Cole. A bunch of people that are in it, and Billy Bob Thornton wrote it. Sam Raimi directed it. And Kate Blanchett basically has premonitions, and Keanu Reeves hates her, and she has a premonition that this woman dies and ends up in the lake at his property, and it's all like this huge thing. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
They got Katie Holmes naked in it?
You betcha.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, I remember that. Oh, yeah, something is bringing up that memory. But yeah, horror movies, and then also, too, as I'm a music fan, a big musical group, again, I mentioned them before, but ICP, and like they're pretty important to your career, man, because JCW and everything like that. I'm reading all this awesome stuff about working for them. How did you tell the people how you got hooked up with ICP and what it's like hanging out with them?
Well, I'm actually leaving Wednesday for the 19th gathering of the Juggalos. That'll be 19 in a row for me. But me and Ian was doing a thumbtack death match in Detroit, Michigan, and ICP was there, and they talked to me afterwards, and Joe, Violent J, looked at me and he said, someday we're going to do something big, and would you be willing to come with us? And I said yes, but I didn't know who ICP was. To me, it was just a couple of white kids with dreadlocks.
Right.
And then I said yes. They gave me a Super Balls t-shirt and a Carnival of Love CD. I listened to it on the way home. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was great. I just kept listening to it because I liked it so much. And then I'm in St. Louis walking around the mall, and I see other kids wearing their T-shirts. And I was like, holy shit, this is the guy who wanted me to come with him someday, but I didn't know how to get a hold of him. And then finally they was doing a show called Stranglemania Live, and they got a hold of a guy named Dan Curtis, told Dan Curtis, get a hold of Mad Man Pondo any way you can. And he did. And I've been with them ever since. Every wrestling show. They started out with Stranglemania Live, then they did Hellfire. And then I was at the first JCW show, and I'll probably be at the last JCW show.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and you're talking about how great they are to work for and stuff like that. And I've always, I used to be a huge, ICP fan when I was younger and stuff like that. And I was just like, imagine from what you hear, you always hear about like how they're doing all this stuff for their community, or they're bringing something back, or they're making something happen. For the people they, grew up around, or the people they're tight with and the people they're friends with. And their record label is huge for an independent label. I mean, they're making more money than they would if they ever signed to a major label. So they just seem like really interesting dudes. And then also too, you're talking about, you're going to the Gathering. What is the Gathering like? I've always wanted to go. So I figured, hey, I will ask you. You've been to 19 in a row.
Well, it is like something that you can't experience anywhere else. I'll say this: out of 19 gatherings, I have probably seen over 100,000, if not over 200,000 juggalos over the 19 years. And you cannot have a church rally without one fight. You cannot have a football game without some fights. You can't have a concert without some fights. But at this Gathering of the Juggalos, 200,000 kids over 19 years, I've maybe seen a total of 3 fights my whole time there.
Really?
So
that's amazing.
So that's more or less my explanation of the Gathering of the Juggalos.
Well, it's just like if you're into anything, man. Like I feel like if you're into ICP or you're into pro wrestling or whatever you're into, man, there's like these dedicated community of people, and when you get around like-minded people that love the same thing you do, and it might not necessarily in social circles be considered like the coolest thing that you could be into. You know what I'm saying? Like you're an outsider, you're different, you feel that way. When you meet up with 199,000 other people that are like you, you're having the best weekend of your life, probably.
True that.
So, but I'm gonna have to go, man. So, you've talked me into it. I'm gonna go to the Gathering, guys. It's gonna happen.
Awesome.
But yeah, and so as we're winding down here, man, I know I've talked your ear off almost an hour already here. Let me ask you a couple quick questions. What is your favorite match that you've had?
Well, I've had so many, and it's so hard to break down, but I always go to my top 3. The first one was that CZW Tournament of Death. Was probably the best match that I've ever had, but the worst outcome. That's why I took the Death Valley Driver onto the bed of number 2 pencils. Still got that shit in my back. But me and Toby Klein from Tournament of Death. Then JCW, I took on Terry Funk for the Juggalo Championship Wrestling belt and beat Terry Funk. That's probably the one that's in mind the most. And then the third one in Japan, when Shinzei Suzuki left or fired, whichever one you want to go for, the WWE, he came to Big Japan and he wrestled me and Tony, him and Abdullah Kobayashi. And we could have swore, since he just left WWE, people were going to turn on us and not cheer for us, but nothing was farther from the truth. When we got in the ring, they were chanting Bakugai Gene, and then when those two came out, they booed them. So that was always a really big thing to me, that the Japanese people stuck behind us.
Another quick question here. Do you have a favorite match that you enjoy as a fan of someone else's work?
Yes. I was there the night Samoa Joe took on Necro Butcher at the ECW arena. I was sitting in the balcony. It was one of the most intense, fucking fabulous moments of my wrestling career. But I go back even farther than just to sell. Me and Necro, he was late getting there to wrestle because he just flew into Japan. Well, I flew in to Louisville a couple of days before Necro flew in. And Necro was listening to Samoa Joe's podcast, or somebody was interviewing him, and he was talking about how Necro never spent any time in the dojo, and just normal wrestling hype. But Necro took big offense to it. So when Necro got there, he said, "I'm going down into the catacombs," which I didn't know if he knew ECW Arena had catacombs or not. He said, "Don't come get me until 2 matches before mine." I said, okay. So all the stuff you see in Samoa Joe versus Necro, a lot of that wasn't called. So it's just a brutal battle between the two of them. And another that I witnessed in Chillicothe, Ohio, for a guy named Josh Hayes, he booked not Daniel Bryan, but Bryan Danielson versus not Dean Ambrose, but Jon Moxley. Daniel Bryan's plane was really, really late, so he got dressed in the car. Jon Moxley went to the ring, and then they played Bryan Danielson's. He came from the car and got the ring. Those two had never met each other in their lives, but they had a 5-star match right there in Chillicothe, Ohio. And I told Moxley, because I didn't really tell Daniel Bryan, but I told Moxley then, I said, "You're going to go somewhere in this business someday," and look where he is today,
Exactly. They're killing it for sure. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely check out those matches, guys. I definitely know the Samoa Joe Necro Butcher match is on YouTube. I have seen it with my own eyes. So definitely check that out. Get a good frame of reference for what we're talking about here. And then, so with that, I'll let you go ahead and we'll start winding down here. One last question, though. Do you have, where can people catch you here in the future? Where can people see Pondo?
August 11th, I will be in Madison, West Virginia. I'm taking on Manny Fernandez for ASW and doing a book signing. Girl Fight will be here at the arena August 21st. Of course, I help run the thing. Trying to think. I always get stumped on this. I'm booked places, but I always forget where I'm booked. August 26th in Detroit. There's another Girl Fight show at the Token Lounge. And shit. Just write me on my Facebook. I'll tell you where I'm going to be.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. There'll be links to Pondo's Facebook there, so you can keep up with all his appearances coming up. Make sure that you check out Memoirs of a Madman. You can buy it right now on Amazon. It's eligible for Prime. I got it in a couple days. It's an awesome read. You'll fly right through it, and you'll love every second of it. So yeah, absolutely. Check that out. It's on Amazon.
Also eatsleepwrestle.com. You can pick it up there.
Also on eatsleepwrestle.com. Pick it up there. You can get your regular or your signed copies while you're at eatsleepwrestle.com. And yeah, Pondo, it's been awesome getting to know you, man, getting to chat with you. And I'll be seeing you at another live event, or hey, maybe I'll be seeing you at the movies, as we're both going to definitely be abusing our MoviePass.
Sounds great, man.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, guys. This has been the Sean vs. Wild podcast.
Thank you for listening, DNN.